Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Wednesday meditation gathering. I'm so glad you're all here to share this time together. Meditation gathers energy when we meditate together. This week, we have Robert Perry, who will lead us in meditation, and then we'll have 20 minutes of silence. Robert um, actually started this with us in April 2020, just when the pandemic was kicking in. He did a wonderful meditation workshop with us, and it was all on Zoom, which we'd never done before. And then he suggested that we meditate for 20 minutes, and we've been doing that every Wednesday since. It's over 80 recordings, and it's been such a gift. So after 20 minutes of silence, we're going to open it up for sharing, and we end approximately 10:45. Over to you, Robert.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, it's great to be back here. I do apologize for missing last time. And at the same time, it's really good to make it up and great to be back with all of you. I wanted to share a meditation this morning. It's a little bit out of the norm in that it's a recorded guided meditation. So let me give you some of the background. Uh, as I've said in other contexts here at the Miracle Network, the workbook has a heavy emphasis on meditation. It comes in lesson 41. It's announced with a lot of fanfare. It's not called meditation, it's called this kind of practice, but you can tell what it is. It's quite obvious. And that initial kind of meditation, which is very heavily emphasized in the 40s, 41, 44, 45, 47, 49, it is about withdrawing your attention from the world and sinking down and inward to the very center of your mind where the presence of God is. And after the 40s, meditation becomes a real staple in the workbook. It becomes more and more frequent in what you're told to do each day. That initial kind of meditation, there's a minimum of a verbal focus. Later on in lesson 183, there's a kind of meditation, which I call name of God meditation. And all you do there, what you mainly do is you repeat God's name as a way of calling on him to come to you. But what happens over the course of the workbook is that even though the focus on verbalizing during your meditation is minimal from the start, it it drops away even further. And as we get into the second part of the year, and this really starts with review 5, which begins with lesson 171. So we're not even quite halfway through the year. So starting with review 5, there's a focus on a kind of meditation that is even more wordless and even more formless. So that comes in review 5. It comes in again in lessons like lesson 189, where you just empty your mind of every thought and every belief that you have about yourself, about the world, about God. It comes in review 6, which is the final review in part 1 of the workbook. And then it's a major focus in the introduction to part 2 of the workbook, where we're essentially told to do this in all of our practice periods. So what is this style of meditation? Is clearly where the workbook is ending up. It's the kind that it sees as the most advanced. Uh, and essentially, it is a kind of meditation that I think of as a vacuum, because in a vacuum, there is an emptiness, but the vacuum's also drawing something into itself in that emptiness. So on the one hand, we are emptying our minds of thoughts, which is obviously very typical for meditations, but we're also emptying our minds of beliefs. And that's a deeper thing, to actually set aside our beliefs about ourselves, about the world, Uh, that's a deeper kind of emptying. And then as well, as I've been alluding to, there is an emptying of our mind of words. We don't bring in words into this kind of meditation until we need them to dispel wandering thoughts, which is pretty frequent for most of us. It's very frequent for me. And while we empty our minds of thoughts, beliefs, and words, we also have this, that there's the motion of the vacuum to draw something in. Our minds are in a state of expectant waiting for God to show up, basically. Like you might stare at the horizon before the sunrise, waiting for that little peak of light that is the first edge of the sun rising over the horizon. And the Course even alludes to that image after a lot of discussion of this kind of meditation in the introduction to part 2. So, we're in this state of expectant waiting. If you think about waiting, which is a word used again and again in these instructions for this kind of meditation, which I call open mind meditation. When you're waiting, there's two things going on. You're still, right? You're not doing anything. And here you're mentally still. You're not mentally doing anything. And while you're still, you're expecting, right? That event to come, whatever it is. So imagine that you're in a place where you're, in a sense, staring at the horizon of your mind, free of words, free of thoughts, free of beliefs, and you're just expectantly waiting for that light to peek over the horizon. So that's the kind of meditation that we'll be doing today. Now, it's recording because recently my colleague Emily Bennington and I did a meditation workshop for the Circle of Atonement. And as a bonus for the workshop, we went into the studio and recorded 3 different meditations, the 3 main styles that I see in the workbook. The guy that runs the audio studio is a great musician, loves doing meditation music. So he had added his own original music to these meditations. And I want to play for you today and have us, guided by today, the open mind meditation. So just to give you a little heads up what it will be, there is about 10 minutes of Emily's voice guiding you into the meditation. And it's a lot, I know, but the point is to give you a real sense of exactly what this technique is asking of you. Okay. Um, there's some quiet music in the background. After her voice ends, the music carries on for just a few minutes, and it tapers off during those few minutes until it's just silence. So we'll have our 20-minute meditation, and the bell will be rung at the end. But what we will have is 10 minutes of that voice guiding us in exactly what we're doing in our minds. And then a few minutes of music trailing off after that, and then complete silence. So obviously we'll be meant to continue doing what the voice instructed us to do. But just bear in mind, this is really the crowning meditation technique in the workbook. The workbook is guiding us in our meditations to reach this point of just pure, kind of empty, expectant waiting. I find this technique a more challenging one than the other two, but it makes sense. If it's the crowning one, the most advanced one, it's going to stretch us perhaps a bit further, though many people I know find this the most comfortable one themselves. Okay, so let me share my screen. Um, the visual's boring and unimportant, and your eyes will be closed anyway. Okay, so in just a minute, I'm going to go ahead and hit play. But before I do that, let's just get quiet and get comfortable and get ready to meditate here. close your eyes. Get settled with your body, in your mind. Take a deep breath. Let's go ahead and start.
Open mind meditation. As you begin, merely close your eyes and then forget all that you thought you knew and understood. Simply do this. Be still and lay aside all thoughts of what you are and what God is. All concepts you have learned about the world, all images you hold about yourself. Empty your mind of everything it thinks is either true or false, or good or bad, of every thought it judges worthy, and all the ideas of which it is ashamed. Hold onto nothing. Do not bring with you one thought the past has taught, nor one belief you ever learned before from anything. Forget this world. Forget this course. And come with wholly empty hands unto your God. You are leaving behind all that shuts out the experience of God. Imagine that you are walking along a path, divesting yourself of the burden of all your thoughts and beliefs. Leaving them strewn on the path behind you, and leaving yourself free to meet your God. Now imagine that in this way, you reach the edge of a cliff. Before you is nothing but open sky, the empty sky of your mind, cleared of all words, thoughts, and beliefs. Now repeat the following thought to God, which states your intention and which you will use to recall your mind from wandering. I am waiting only for you. Now simply stand there at the edge of the world, free of words and thoughts, waiting in quiet for God to rise in the sky of your mind. Wait in silent expectancy for the truth. Hold your mind still. Keep it tranquil and at rest, yet filled with a stir of deep anticipation, for the dawning of God is at hand. Wait in quiet expectation for your God and Father. Hold this anticipation wordlessly. Let there be nothing in your mind but a bare expectancy. Hold your mind in silent readiness. Fix your gaze on the horizon of your mind, where the radiance of God is already appearing. Don't let your gaze leave that horizon, and let your expectancy be confident, for you know that in just a moment more, God Himself will rise within your mind. Wait in silence, unafraid and certain of His coming. Your attention will inevitably fall from this formless focus and clothe itself in words and thoughts. Be ready for this. Watch for your mind falling away from its focus. And when it does, you can use words to draw it back. Immediately repeat, "This thought I do not want. I choose instead, I am waiting only for you." Then return to your silent, expectant waiting. Do this as often as you have to, even if it's every 10 seconds. Keep bringing your mind back to waiting. Let your mind rest in still anticipation and in quiet joy. Try to reach a state of perfect waiting, where your mind is at rest but alert, still but expectant, empty but full. For that is what allows God to come to you.
Open your eyes slowly and come back into the room. We have approximately 20 minutes left for sharing your reflections and your questions. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand or use the reactions button at the bottom of the screen, and I'll invite you to take yourself off of mute. And if you'd like to ask Robert a question or a comment with confidentiality, put your message in the chat bottom at the bottom of the screen, and Robert can read that out. Sarah, would you like to share?
Hey. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that meditation, Robert. I'm fairly new to the course. I did the workbook over about 18 months until January, and I went so far, probably the early 200s, and then found it getting a bit woolly. So I then went back again and did the first sort of 100 more or less. And now this year I've been following it day by day with the calendar, and I've noticed that as the workbook has progressed, it's now much shorter, so that should leave me time for more sort of actual meditation practice. And you've reminded me how important meditation is. I actually find it quite difficult, and I do find actually listening to a guided meditation helpful, although I've noticed that also can lead me to be lazy, like I'm just listening and not doing it. What I find is there's a lot of distraction, and I'd like to understand, where is this coming from? Like, is this the part of the mind that needs healing, like the split mind, the ego mind? Is it the brain? I mean, maybe it doesn't matter. I guess what I'm really trying to do is find a way to reduce that mental noise. Like, even then, I'm listening and I'm having this experience of being on the edge of the cliff and the blue, and then suddenly I'm getting distracted by, carrots, what I'm going to cook for tea. So, and it's very interruptive because I'm enjoying it, and then suddenly before I know it I've just gone mentally, I've gone somewhere else. So I would appreciate some advice as a fairly new course student on how to enrich my meditation experience.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that's pretty much everyone's experience. I think that there are those either born meditators or really highly trained and advanced meditators who can just maintain the quiet. For the rest of us, there is going to be a regular intrusion of wandering thoughts. And all meditation traditions realize that. I think we get distressed by it, but we should just consider it, as kind of the way it goes. In terms of where it comes from, in the very first meditation in the workbook in lesson 41, he talks about how in our mind is what he calls a heavy cloud of insane thoughts, dense and obscuring. So I think that's all we need to know. It's just a heavy cloud of insane thoughts. And our job, at least in that meditation, is to sink through them, and whenever we get caught up in the clouds, to just bring our mind back. Couple things I'll say about how we deal with the wandering thoughts. First of all, the workbook, really like all meditation traditions, has a big focus on specifically how you bring your mind back. So whatever lesson you're doing, if it's asking you to meditate, and the requests to do that get subtler and subtler as the workbook goes on, so they're a bit harder to notice. But in so many of them, they will give you a specific technique for dealing with wandering thoughts. So it might just be, it might be repeating the idea for the day. That's the most common one. There's a lot of different ones. I mean, there's a real flexibility there. The one we used in this meditation is drawn from Review 6. We were supposed to keep your mind free of words, except when your mind wanders, and then you say, this thought I do not want, I choose instead, and then you repeat your idea for the day, whatever that is. So there are a lot of techniques, but my recommendation is to know which one you're going to use as you go into the meditation and be on top of it and use it. The other thing I want to say is that it's really, really easy to say, it's okay if my mind is kind of off and thinking about what to make for tea, or, my appointment coming up or whatever. It's okay. I still feel relaxed and peaceful. And I think that's one of the like absolute central things we have to not let ourselves say. We have to take a stand against wandering thoughts, not a sort of defiant stand where we're angry at them and we're like fighting them, but just tell ourselves it's crucial that we not just let them take over, that we respond to everyone, even if that's all we do. There's a really great discussion of this in lesson 74. And what he says in that lesson is that it's crucial not to let yourself slip off into what he calls withdrawal. And it's clear what he means by withdrawal is where you just kind of descend into this sleepy, kind of drained state. And it's really a pseudo peace. And I've spent a lot of meditations in that, like, well, I feel not all here, but it's still relaxing. And what he says is that real peace is alive and alert. And so you have to not let yourself, he says there's definite gain in refusing to let yourself slip off into withdrawal, even if you do not experience the peace you seek. So he's wanting us to build a mental habit that says, okay, I'm going to be on top of this, and I'm not going to just let myself be pulled off into the nether regions by my wandering thoughts. I'm going to respond each time, bring my mind back each time. And what that means is we have to really be on top. I mean, meditation then becomes something to be fully, fully present for, which our minds resist. But my experience and the experience of people I've heard from is that when you take that stand against wandering thoughts, the meditations absolutely improve.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, thank you.
I feel that when there's a very clear workbook lesson statement, like on Monday, I was having a hard time with some stuff, and I kept remembering I can elect to choose not to let, I can't remember what it is now.
Yeah, change my thoughts to hurt.
Exactly, I can elect not to, and during the day I was actively making that choice as soon as those thoughts came in. So I suppose, so I'm understanding from you that actually during meditation that can be more intense, and that will help keep focus.
Yeah, I think having a technique to draw your mind back and just being determined to use it is really crucial. I was at a Catholic retreat center a number of years ago, and I talked to this woman who she said she'd been meditating for a long time. They did centering prayer at this retreat center, and that centering prayer has some real commonalities with one of the course's meditation techniques, the one I call Name of God meditation. And she said she'd been meditating for so long without a lot of success. And then she said these Hindu teachers came through, and they said you just have to, like what I'm saying, draw your mind back every time it wanders. And she said just that one instruction from them transformed her meditations. And she said now she sits down and it's like she feels the universe breathe. Now, I don't know what that means, but it sounds really good. So wouldn't we all like to have our meditations transformed into something like that? So, and for her, the key transition, the transformation was that don't let your mind wander.
Great.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Linda, would you like to share?
Yes, thank you, Robert. That was just wonderful. What's been happening to me is I felt in the last couple of years I've been going through yeah, really quite happy time. But recently, in the last year, I've had a lot of stress. Things have been coming up really, really getting to me. Like all the stuff that I've probably hidden, and I've asked for it. I have asked for everything to be shown, and it has been coming up really, really badly. However, my meditation and your meditation reminded me of this. So it's a confirmation for me, is I've been saying, I rest in God. I want to rest in God. And I can sit down and be still, be in the stillness. So it takes a little bit of time to get to that. And then the word eternity comes up, and I can just be in that space. So your meditation today has confirmed really the way to go. And one of the things that Emily said was about the coming to the edge of the world. And well, I was about 28, 30, and I had a vivid dream. I don't dream very often, but I had a vivid dream of coming to this end of the world cliff. And then all of a sudden, I just jumped, held out my arms, and said, "Into thy hands, O Lord." Now, I wasn't doing a course. I suppose I've always been on a search. Well, I have been, I know that. But that's what it reminded me of, this coming to the edge of the world. And for me, I just jumped. And I was in heaven, if you like, I suppose. So your meditation today brought all this up for me, that I'm on the right path. That's what it's confirming to me. So thank you for that. Thank you.
The dream, yeah, thank you. The dream sounds really similar. How interesting.
Yeah, and I wasn't even, as I said, I was about 28, 30. I didn't dream. I don't dream very often that I remember, but it was so vivid that I remember it clearly.
Yeah, there are some experiences, they say, that are like that, like near-death experiences where people retain the memory as if it was yesterday for decades.
Yeah, yes. So thank you. I feel as though it's been confirmed that I am on the right path. I'm on the right meditation path.
That's wonderful to hear. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Angela, would you like to share?
Hi. Hi, Robert.
Hi.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Emily's voice is fantastic for that meditation, beautifully paced, as Terry here said. I love all the different meditations in the course. And I wanted you to comment on something, actually, that the course says. I've always wondered about this, and it's in the section, I need do nothing. I know you know everything back to front, so you probably know, not back to front, front to back. So you'll know this quote when it says about, nor is a lifetime of contemplation and long periods of meditation aimed at detachment of the body necessary. All such attempts will ultimately succeed because of their purpose, yet the means are tedious and time-consuming. It says your way will be different, not in purpose, but in means. And it says, one instant spent together with your brother restores the universe of both of you. And it seems to be saying there, you don't need all this long meditation. What are your thoughts about that, Robert?
Yeah, good question. I'm never asked that, but I'm always ready for it. What it's talking about there are two different ways of attaining holiness that are then contrasted with the Course's way. One way is where you just wrestle with your physical temptations to give in to sin. And we're all familiar with that way. And the other way is where you have these long periods of meditation or contemplation. And contemplation is a term from the Catholic mystical tradition that is like meditation, only contemplation is more where it's infused from a higher level, like you're stilling your mind, and then your mind is being infused with the presence of God. And in that second way, the long periods of meditation, you're trying to detach from your body, I think, seem to be a source of sin, and through those lengthy periods, attain a holiness that your body would drag you away from. And what the Course objects to about both of those methods, the wrestling against temptation and the long periods of meditation, is they assume that you have to attain a holiness that is not yours now. And so you struggle against the unholiness in you, or you try forcibly to rise above it and eventually achieve holiness. And what that section is saying instead is, with a lot of things, but one is, you're already there, you're already holy, you just don't know it. And so the main thing it advocates, in contrast to those other two paths, is moments where you just have this sense, I don't need to do anything, which really implies there's nothing to achieve, there's no holiness to attain. You still your mind, and in this moment of stillness, the Holy Spirit enters and establishes in you what it calls a quiet center, which can remain in you even once you get up from your chair and you're out doing in the world again. But my point is that it's not meditation as such that's being criticized there. And I think this really goes back to Helen's link with Catholicism. There is he's criticizing a kind of approach to meditation or contemplation where the length of time you spend each day, which may be hours, is reflective of an underlying thought of, I have to clean up my unholy self and attain a holiness that God has not yet granted me. And what he advocates in its stead sounds very meditative. Moments of just pure stillness in which the only thought you have is, I need do nothing. And in that stillness, you allow the Holy Spirit to enter your mind and set up residence there. That sounds kind of meditative. And what I want to also add is that there's no mystery about where Jesus, as author of the Course, stands on meditation. There were many references to it in the early dictation of the Course, all of them positive. Okay, so those got all edited out in the final editing pass. They stayed until the very last editing pass that produced the familiar edition from FIP, the Blue Book. And in those early references, you can see exactly what Jesus thinks about meditation. And he's very much for it. And then in the workbook, when we reach the workbook, it's super clear how important and even like foundational he regards it. It's not as central as forgiveness, of course, but it's a huge focus in the workbook. And it's brought up again in the Manual for Teachers. And it comes up again in the Song of Prayer supplement. So we shouldn't take that reference in I Need Do Nothing, as important as it is, to think, oh, well, we shouldn't meditate as Course students. We should take it as, well, we should meditate, still our minds, but not in the thought of, I'm going to make myself holy by doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, and not necessarily to have to remove yourself from the body, because as in what is the body, it ends up saying, now is the body holy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we can use the body. We don't have to ignore it. And I know as well with meditation, people, students over the years have said to me about, well, I don't meditate. And I said, do you do the lessons or the workbook practice? Yes. Well, then you meditate, because it is a form of meditation, even just practicing the lessons, like a contemplation.
It is, but I would say that that, I mean, from my standpoint, meditation as we conceive it, where you really intentionally still your mind and open to a higher state, is one of the practices in the workbook, one among many, and a very important one, which for some reason has gone almost unnoticed, and it just defies imagination to me. But the reason, I think, is a couple reasons. One is that we don't pay that much attention to what the workbook tells us to do. I mean, we generally like read it in the morning and go on our way. The other one is he doesn't use the word meditation except once in those instructions. And for some reason, by not having the word in there, we don't notice what he's telling us. I mean, he's basically saying, sit down, empty your mind, sink down and inward to the light in you, keep your mind clear. We should know what that is, right? But without using the word, we just don't know what we're looking at.
Okay, everyone, we've
Thank
come
you,
to
Angela.
the top of the meditation. Take yourself off of mute and show your appreciation to Robert. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Much.
Very
Thank
interesting.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
To be with all of you.
Absolutely great.
Thank
Love to
you.
see you.
Thank you.
Okay, now God
Thank you
bless.
very much.
Bye now.
All right. Bye.